my name is Ashna. This is Rob, Khadijah, and Dunan. And the topic we chose to do is drug decriminalization, but we're specifically going to focus on marijuana, also known as cannabis, weed, or pot. So first I'm going to begin by clarifying the difference between legalization and decriminalization of a drug. Drug legalization is the process of eliminating or reducing drug prohibition laws, whereas drug decriminalization calls for reduced control and penalties compared to existing laws. Proponents of drug decriminalization generally support the use of fines or other punishments to replace prison terms and often propose systems whereby illegal drug users who are caught will be fined, but would not receive a permanent criminal record as a result. Now that we know the difference between the two, it's time for a pop quiz. Which European country has the most liberal drug laws?
Netherlands?
No, it's not the Netherlands. Any other guesses? Okay. No, not Holland.
Amsterdam?
So,
Wait, one more guess. You said European country, right?
yeah.
Should it be Belgium?
No.
What? Germany? Belgium.
Any guess? Okay. So the correct answer is Portugal, which in 2001 became the first European country to officially abolish all criminal penalties for personal possession of drugs. Portugal addressed their drug problem by replacing jail time with the offer of therapy. Under Portugal's new rule, people found guilty of possessing small amounts of drugs, such as an ounce of weed, are sent to a panel consisting of a psychologist, social worker, and legal advisor for appropriate treatment instead of jail. The question is, does the new policy work? A release of results from a report commissioned by the Cattle Institute in April 2006 found out that in the 5 years after personal possession was decriminalized, illegal drug use among teens in Portugal declined, while the number of people seeking treatment for drug addiction more than doubled. Compared to the European Union and the U.S., Portugal's drug use numbers are impressive. Following decriminalization, Portugal had the lowest rate of lifetime marijuana use in people over 15. In the EU, 10%. The most comparable figure in America is in people over 12, which is 39.8%. Proportionally, more Americans have used cocaine than Portuguese have used marijuana. The Cattle paper reports that between 2001 and 2006, in Portugal, rates of lifetime use of any illegal drug among 7th through 9th graders fell from 14.1% to 10.6%. Drug use in older teens also declined. In addition, the number of treatment for drug addiction rose to 14,877 from 6,040 after decriminalization, and money saved on enforcement allowed for increased funding of drug treatment as well. Portugal's case study is of some interest to lawmakers in the U.S. The U.S. has long defended a hardline drug policy, supporting only international agreements that enforce drug prohibition and imposing on its citizens some of the world's harshest penalties for drug possession and sales. Yet America has the highest rates of cocaine and marijuana use in the world, and while most of the EU, including Holland, has more liberal drug laws than the U.S., it also has less drug use. The president of the Institute on Drugs and Drug Addiction has stated that police are now able to refocus on tracking much higher level dealers and larger quantities of drugs in Portugal since they decriminalized drug usage. Additionally, the Cattle Report's author, Greenwald, says data shows that decriminalization does not result in increased drug use. And all the information can be found at content.time.com. And I'll pass it over to Rob now.
Now to go from a more international to more local. Decriminalization of marijuana was just voted on within the past year in the state of New Jersey and still has yet to be enacted. When New Jersey finally enacts the law, they will join 16 other states in the United States where marijuana is decriminalized, and 2 of those states where marijuana is entirely legal. We as a group feel that the decriminalization of marijuana can have many pros to the situation, with some of them being will not ruin somebody's life. Police and court resources can be freed up to focus on larger crimes, more serious crimes. And finally, the decriminalization of marijuana could have a lot of, other than recreational use, more industrial and commercial use. So now to go back into those points to more emphasize them. Police and court resources could be freed up for more serious crimes. Many consider the war on drugs an expensive failure. Resources for DEA, FBI, and Border Security are only the tip of the iceberg. You must add to the cost of the police officers, judges, public defenders, prosecutors, juries, court responders, prison guards, and so on and so forth. Decriminalization of marijuana freed up all those people to concentrate on more important things like terrorism, harder drugs, murder, and so on. In addition, an already overloaded civil court docket would be improved, thus the wait time for other legitimate court cases would be reduced. And then, aside from recreational use, marijuana or cannabis can be used for several industrial and commercial uses. That's over 25,000 products can be made from this crop. The plant used in making marijuana has a ton of alternative uses, including construction and thermal insulation materials, paper, geotextiles, dynamite, composites for auto, and insect repellent. As far as back as 1938, Popular Mechanics deemed it as a $1 billion crop, as over 25,000 products can be made from it. Unfortunately, the lack of legality in the U.S. and other countries have squashed the growth and development of these products. We shouldn't limit the use of such a diverse product because one is found objectionable by some. And then finally, my last pro is drug busts often ruin somebody's life. Say you're a college kid and you get busted for a dime bag. You're automatically going to have a record. You might do some jail time and you might not be able to get a job later in life. Should you really be penalized for something like that? Or should it just be like a traffic ticket where you made a mistake, you pay for it, and that's it? It doesn't carry on to a longer life. And then this article went into a lot more serious of the drug bust, often trapped young people, which is just like, it's pretty much saying that like it's the worst of the worst. So our pretty much pros are it frees up the court sources, can be used for industrial and commercial uses, and often can give other people a chance that got busted for something. I'm going to pass it
on. There is an argument that drug decriminalization could help solving the U.S. budget crisis, reducing prison overcrowding and cripple drug dealers. But this is not supported by evidence. In fact, the benefits of decriminalization illicit drugs far outweigh the negative consequences of legitimizing them. Basically, the whole society is affected by the problem. According to Dr. Arnold Tribash, drug prohibition did not prevent millions of our people from purchasing and abusing drugs in the illegal market. There is also evidence that drug prohibition caused an immense amount of crime, corruption, the waste of billions of dollars, the invasion of fundamental American freedoms, and the prevention of the proper medical treatment of many patients suffering from original base pain or addiction or both. Each year in the U.S., police arrest 1.5 million people for drug-related violations. More than 80% of them are just for simple possession. Not all these people know the consequences of drug possession. Some of them got involved into it by influence and some by ignorance. Police cut them up, arrest them, and put blemishes on their records. All these blemishes will stop them from getting or contribute to the society. With the decriminalization of drugs, people will no longer get a criminal record, like you said, from possession of drugs. Instead, it will be treated like we treat traffic violation. That way, we will decrease the likelihood of putting blemishes on people's record, and hence the likelihood that they will be able to get a job and contribute to the society. The way the solution going to be adopted is by providing some education, because people are quite ignorant about drugs in general. Offer people some free counseling and let them know with decriminalization, you cannot sell drugs, but because they still remain illegal. When we look at all the negative aspects of illegal drugs and all bad things caused by criminalization of drugs, we favor decriminalization. With decriminalization, people will have a chance to do something better for themselves.
So, in conclusion, we've learned that decriminalization, it reduces the penalties for first-time possession of small amount of marijuana for personal use for adults. This also means that violation is not at the level of a crime, but that does not mean that marijuana is legal. And some of the pros and cons that we've discussed here are, some pros are it can bring additional tax revenue, decreasing the economy's budget. It also avoids lifelong criminals. You have children at 17, 18 getting caught, and then they have this on their record, so it avoids all that. And then you also have, it reduces the overcrowding in prisons. And the statistics I got from Students for SensibleDrugPolicy.org said that the U.S. has 5% of the world's population, but it makes up 25% of the world's prison population. And that's because you have a lot of people in prison for little crimes like marijuana. And it also brings medical benefits. You have cancer patients who benefit from marijuana use. And some of the cons that we've learned are it can be seen as a gateway drug. Depends on how you look at it. And then you also have the problem of marijuana getting into the hands of small children. But because it is decriminalized and not legalized, you still have penalties for this law, for this to not happen. And then you also have to deal with people driving or doing other things under the influence. We learned that just because marijuana is decriminalized doesn't mean that drug use will increase with all the studies done in Portugal. Decriminalization is not encouraging the use of drugs, but allowing an individual to make their own decision based on their own health and well-being. And in closing, we have presidents like Bill Clinton, President Obama, and Bush who've all used illegal drugs in their past, and they all became leaders of the free world. And had they been caught, that would not have been possible. They would have had a record and nothing. They couldn't have become anyone. And decriminalizing allows people who've made a mistake to have a second chance and make it right. And imagine living in a country where marijuana is decriminalized. The first thing that comes to mind is everyone using it for recreational use, and that's not the case. That's not what we're aiming to tell everyone. But it's more for like medical use, and it also helps reduce the budget with the additional tax revenue that I spoke about before. And that's it.